This is Predictions, the podcast about our future. I'm your host, Konstantin, and I'm here with my brother, Ingmar.
Hi, today we want to talk about vertical farming and if it is the future of agriculture.
Vertical farming has been a huge trend in the past years, I would say. There have been many startups, has been in the media, touted as the big solution to a lot of problems. Huge investment by SoftBank. But Ingmar, why do you think that this is a trend now? What is the argument of these companies and why are people investing into this now?
Yeah, I think there are two things that are so intriguing about it. First of all, you want to use space more efficiently, and second of all, you want to use energy more efficiently, right? Because photosynthesis, so the process that plants use to convert sunlight into energy that is digestible by the human body, has only about 6% or even less efficiency. And photovoltaic, so solar cells, are much better. So I think that those are the two things that are kind of fueling this hype right now, I would say.
But I can already hear some doubt in your voice where you don't really believe this argument.
Yeah, I mean, the one with the energy efficiency, you have to be a little bit careful about because, of course, the conversion of energy to electric, so of sunlight to electric energy of photovoltaic is better than the conversion efficiency of sunlight to carbohydrates of plants. But that doesn't mean that the conversion efficiency of sunlight to electric and then via lamps back to plants and to carbohydrates is better. So this then really depends on how efficient you can target the lamps on the spectrum that the plants need. So you could imagine having lamps that are not polychromatic but only have several wavelengths that are very efficient in triggering photosynthesis. And then maybe the efficiency might be better than with plants, the overall efficiency.
Yeah, I think this is what you're seeing, right? When you look at the pictures of these vertical farms, they're all in violet. I guess that's because they're only going for these specific wavelengths. The idea is that you use photovoltaics to use a broad spectrum of solar wavelengths and then funnel it down to a smaller spectrum, and then you get a better energy equation. But I think from what I've seen, there's still an energy problem in these farms, right? So even though they may be more efficient they may be using the energy more efficiently, I think they still have very high energy costs. And so I guess it's still an issue that they're not on the field where they have natural light, but they have to pay for the energy instead. And from what I've heard, this is also the reason why they grow so many salads, because salad is basically water and some nutrients, and there's very little structure. So salads don't need so much energy; they don't need so much light to grow, and so that's why they grow that. Do you know if there are any farms that grow something more serious than salads at this point?
Yeah, I think they both have to optimize for high prices and low demands in energy. So I think the thing about salads is also that their surface their surface in relation to their mass is quite high. Like other than, for example, if you grow, corn, I think it is it's much more surface per mass with salads. So I think those are the things they optimize for. Yeah. But I don't know. I think up to now at least it looks a little bit like it's not really more energy efficient. But I think people are excited anyway because they don't care about that so much. So the idea is kind of that in the future we don't care about energy anymore because there's abundant supply of solar energy from everywhere, and the only thing that is really limited is space, right? So it still makes sense. I think that's the argument.
Yeah, well, I guess, but for me, it's like, sure, my solar cells, they maybe have its 20% efficiency at best. So I lose 80% of the light there. And then I have to produce light from this again. Maybe I get a bit of a gain because I produce at a narrow wavelength. Maybe this is a 50% gain or something like that. I don't think it's much more. Otherwise, we would hear about it.
Yeah.
So I still think that you lose, like, you need to collect more sunlight to grow a plant based on solar electricity with an LED than you would need to collect sunlight if you just grow it outside. So kind of the surface that you need to cover with either plants or sun or solar cells actually is higher when you have an indoor farm, because you need to cover more area with solar cells.
Yeah.
Right. So you kind of have to go for nuclear energy or for some other things, or you have to make an argument that you can use less valuable land, maybe more arid land.
But I think that's the point, right? You can disentangle the need for fertile soil and the need for impacting radiation energy. So this is why, agriculture is so complicated, because you need this change of rain and sun, and you need different seasons, and you can't always grow the same thing because it is so complicated to actually have fertile soil and still at the same time have sufficient energy impacting.
And then outdoors, of course, you have all other kinds of issues like hailstorms and droughts and freezes and anything.
And I think the dream is kind of to have like unlimited energy from solar arrays in the desert, where you don't care about the area anyway, and then produce your food close to where you need it, where the area is actually quite valuable, and then just stack it vertically.
Okay, man, I see the point that, like, in an area where you can grow a forest because there's enough natural rain, you'd rather grow a forest, and you would put your agriculture/solar cells maybe somewhere where there's less rain. I see the point. I also like, aesthetically, I appreciate the idea that you have like a big warehouse where you grow your stuff close to the cities, and it takes much less space, and it's super nice. I just don't know if, like, I think this is so futuristic. It's almost like on the level of a space station. Like, okay, we have like this huge solar arrays in the desert. Only then it makes sense. The reality is right now, also rooftops, of course. You can have solar on rooftops. But I guess, I guess that's an argument. Yeah. I still think that when you look at the prices nowadays, the costs they have for producing like a kale head or some other kind of leafy green, it's like, I just read one number, it's like 40 times more than what you can charge for it in the supermarket. So you're completely not even in the right ballpark to make this competitive. And so it becomes like a hipster salad, right? Something that you sell for a special price to a restaurant where they sell it as a feature, and you don't care that you pay €2 for something that should cost 20 cents. Or 10 cents.
Yeah, plus you have to subsidize it by SoftBank money.
Yeah, that's another thing, yeah. So any strong indicator that you're in a bubble?
Yeah, I mean, right now it doesn't really look like it's economical yet, and it also doesn't look like it's ever going to be so much more energy efficient. But yeah, I could imagine a future where the only valuable resource we have is area or land to live on, and that we then would decide to rather have our countryside be full of forests again, and not have agriculture in every single corner of the planet. Yeah,
I mean, if I could sign a petition today to build solar cells in all the deserts and leave all the arable land for forests, I would for sure sign that, right? Because it's a great way to fight climate change, is to grow forests. At least to some degree, and especially if climate change progresses and the amount of land that we can actually farm on will get less and less and less, you want to use this land more efficiently. And then you still have quite a bit of land where you can put solar cells, even though solar cells also don't work very well at very high temperature. So I see that, but it's still, I don't think it's a business yet. I think there's like 50 other problems that should be solved first. We talked about artificial meat. We talked about artificial dairy. Also in terms of land use, 50 other problems that should be solved first before this comes. Or do you disagree? I mean,
No, I also think so. Like, it's not yet a business. It's not. I mean, it probably doesn't even make sense ecologically yet. It's just a nice idea for a future where we have abundance of energy and lack of space.
Yeah,
that's really the use case there. And once we are at this point, and I, for my part, don't think that's so unrealistic to expect. Then we could do that.
Also,
and then it would make sense.
There's this other argument which is almost aesthetic. I mean, no, it's not aesthetic. It's a real argument that if you grow stuff indoors, you don't have to contest with pests. You don't have to use pesticides or herbicides because you can control the environment very much. I guess that also applies to a greenhouse, though. So that's like not really an argument why you have to go vertical and indoors. But I think this is one of the big draws also for technology-minded people. I think if you're a technology person, you like it clean and simple, and you don't want to go out in a field where you have a lot of unknown parameters. So for these people, building a vertical farm, I assume that because I'm projecting from myself, right? For me, it seems cleaner and nicer to have an indoor farm. And maybe that's also why a lot of these are completely water-based. So they don't use ground, they don't use soil. They use, I think it's called hydroponic culture.
Hydroponic, I think, yes.
So they put the plant roots directly into water or into a mist, which, by the way, also limits your options of plants you can grow. Because usually plants, they need air on the roots. And so because they have water, they can directly change the composition of the water. You just add other ingredients and remove ingredients, and you don't have soil, which is a mixture of a lot of unknown stuff. So that's another...
I mean, the kind of elegant thing about growing food in protected environments is also that you don't have to optimize your population for kind of resiliency against the environment, but you can just assume that the environment is friendly and you can optimize it for being nutritious and growing fast and tasting well. And this is, of course, like you have a much narrower space to optimize for and optimize for what you really care about as an end customer. But I agree. This also applies to greenhouses.
Yeah, but I read this argument that they're not the right crops yet, the right genetics. As somebody said, a lot of these plants are optimized to grow in a more complex environment, and they can have a very controlled environment in vertical farming, and therefore you can use other sorts, lineages of plants that are more optimized for that, as you said. I don't buy it because the same applies to a greenhouse. And in a greenhouse you have maybe some soil, but you can also do hydroponic there. And a lot of salads are already made for greenhouse growth. So I feel like this is a little bit of a cop-out. Yeah, this will maybe give you 10-20% maybe in energy efficiency or something, but it will not completely change the equation there. So
I think the discussion is sometimes a little bit mixed. Some of the advantages that are like sometimes cited for vertical farming are actually advantages of greenhouse farming. And they would apply to greenhouse like what we already have. They already apply there. And I don't think we're yet at the point where you can really make the case for vertical farming. But
do you know
maybe we get there. And I would say it looks like we are going to get there eventually.
Oh yeah, that's for a prediction later. But I do you remember the story about Lyft, who invented like a ride-sharing car that would go to specific stations at specific times, and then somebody wrote like bus. You invented a bus, which is a little bit unfair, I think. But So maybe people are just reinventing a greenhouse because they don't know about greenhouses, or
I think they know about it, right? It's just it's like with all of these things, you have to be careful. There are a lot of people that talk about it have an interest in kind of hyping it up to more than it actually is, and some people are hyping it up because they don't really understand it. Maybe we are also hyping it down or underestimating it because we don't really understand it. But to me, it just seems like the case is not really there yet, and people are mostly talking about the advantages of greenhouses.
But you think it will come in the future? You think that maybe in 10, 20 years, or 30, 50, 100 years? What's your prediction there?
Yeah. I mean, at some point, we have to be at the point where energy is not really the concern anymore. And I'm pretty confident that we'll get there. I mean, it's already... Don't cite me on that, but I think we can satisfy the energy need of the entire humanity right now with a solar array of the size like 200 times 200 kilometers.
Like a small square on the globe.
Yeah. I mean, it's of course it's huge, right? But it's not... I mean, if you can have four times the amount of solar arrays somewhere in the desert, and you wouldn't even mind.
I mean, I wouldn't. Maybe somebody would who lives there. But
yeah, I mean, no, but I think that there are ways to distribute that area of solar arrays somewhere around the Earth where you don't really disturb.
Yeah,
many
fair point.
things.
You don't have to put it in a square,
people.
right? You don't have to actually do it.
Exactly. Yeah. It doesn't have to be at one square. It was probably also hard to distribute that. Yeah. But yeah, so I could imagine a future where we kind of get our shit together and solve this. I mean, we still have the problem of storage, but to me, it sounds a little bit like an infrastructure problem. And then I could very well imagine a future where energy is abundant, and the only thing we need to solve is our usage of land, and we need to optimize that. And I think it is to me it is pretty clear nowadays that it can't go on like that. Like we use way too much space for agriculture.
So it's more of a has to happen argument. Like either we die or we do it, which is fine as a proof. But. Okay, I see. I mean, I agree. I think, especially for salads, I think there will be a point where it makes just sense. I don't know if it will make sense ever for corn or rye or other higher energy plants. But yeah, I can imagine this happening. I just don't see the business case right now. So for me right now, it's a little bit like talking about space stations, right? Like at some point, that makes sense to have space stations around the Earth, and humanity will probably do that because humans are like that. But it doesn't mean that if I build a space station today, this is the correct next step in the innovation ladder. So...
Sure, but I think that the space station argument is actually quite interesting because when you talk to people, many people think that we need to leave Earth because like we don't have space for everybody anymore.
Oh yeah.
And I mean, look around. There's plenty of space. We just use it for agriculture. So I think it is much more. To me, it seems much more plausible that we will optimize our land usage in agriculture before we will optimize our land usage in housing, so to speak, meaning that everybody will move to space, right? So if you're able to believe that humanity will leave Earth due to the lack of space, then you should be able to believe it even more that we will have vertical farming.
Yeah, it's like saying, we should definitely go to Mars and terraform Mars because there is a climate change on Earth and we can't fix that one.
Exactly, because we need more fields to grow our crops. I think there's a point to make that it is probably more realistic that we will just like stack our fields in a vertical manner, right? This is probably easier and more energy efficient as well.
Something that just came to my mind. Do we have any numbers on how much energy it would actually take in terms of electricity if we were to feed one human in the Western world, in the developed world, with vertical farming completely? Because you said something like, okay, there's this square that can supply all the energy needs, But imagine we were all using vertical farming. Would our energy needs be 10 times what it is today, or would it be 100 times, or maybe just 2 times? Because if it's 100 times, we may run out of space for these squares.
Well, I think the upper limit is 5 times, right? Because we have solar arrays with 5% efficiency. I think we can produce solar radiation with close to 100% efficiency. So we can simulate that. So even if we don't optimize anything, we can convert solar light to electrical energy and then reconvert it into light for our plants to grow with a factor of 5 at worst if we don't optimize for any wavelengths, right? So this would be kind of the upper limit.
But then you need 5 times the space of today's agriculture and not 5 times the space of this aforementioned square that...
That's correct. Yeah, I don't know actually if that in that 200 times 200 calculation, if that already includes like the energy. I mean, the energy you actually need as a human is negligible compared to what you need to like drive around all day. But like the way we acquire the energy nowadays, or traditionally, I mean, is very inefficient. Yeah, so you have a point there. That could actually be a quite a huge number. Yes.
So one aspect we haven't talked about is the argument that you save energy by having to transport the food less, by having it closer to population centers.
Well, yeah, I think you do. But yeah, I think it would probably be negligible to the energy you need to grow the food, right?
Yeah, so there's an argument by this one company, what are they called? Plenty, the SoftBank-backed startup. I read somewhere a number that they said like transportation cost is 30% of the cost of produce nowadays. This I can imagine, but transportation cost is mostly the salary, or at least to a big part the salary of the driver. And I think they also included storage cost in there, so that's another thing. So I don't buy it. I don't think that the energy that you need to carry 100,000 salads in a truck is actually so expensive that you would be able to finance the growing of this 100,000 salads. So I think it's another distraction, honestly, in the whole argument.
Yeah. I mean, if you assume that agriculture is less labor intensive than transport, which I think is a point. This seems fair. Then probably the fraction of energy is lower than the fraction of cost. So yeah,
it is a topic that's being hyped, and I think there is a certain market for these kind of things, but it's mostly as an upsell to consumers. So if you can charge people extra for this, because they feel like they're doing something ecologically nice, which I don't think it is nowadays with our energy mix.
Yeah.
They're doing something to improve agricultural innovation. That's correct. They're doing something healthy. That's also correct. So I think if you can charge people for that, then it makes sense. And there's a certain market, but it's relatively small. I think beyond that, it's a huge hype topic. It's one of those things. I don't know. For me, it's a cargo cult innovation thing. Like the topic is being found by some companies. Let's say it's scooters on the street. It's maglev trains. It is 3D printing, or it is in farming. And one person runs there, all the other run after them. And then you have speakers and people basically echo chambering, believing that this is the next big thing, the next innovation. At some point you have SoftBank pouring a couple billions into it, and then there's a lot of noise, and then there's like nothing. Yeah, so I think there are these kinds of things that just the kind of topics that just fizzle out, and either they're completely fizzle out or they're superseded by some better innovation actually, and the future looks different than expected, or sometimes they become like a shadow of themselves, like a much smaller market than they were thought to be. And I think this is what we will see for vertical farming. It will be a huge topic still for 5 years, and then it will disappear. And then I think it will appear again. In like 10, 20 years, you'll have this topic again, and then in another 20 years again. And I think at some point, time will be ripe, every time, and every circle there will be more and more that sticks, and at some point you will have a real industry there. But I think this innovation circle will just fizzle out.
Yeah, I also have a hard time to take it serious as a business opportunity. But I take it very serious, or at least I think it's quite fun to think about as a technology for far in the future, right? Because it's just so elegant to think that, to acknowledge that we have a very huge problem with how inefficient we are about our land usage right now.
Yeah.
And provided that energy is plentiful, that's really like a beautiful solution, right? So I like to think about that, but
yeah,
I would agree that at least for the near future, I don't see a real case to make it profitable or competitive with traditional agriculture.
I agree with the future vision. I think that if I had to draw my perfect future, there would be a bunch of solar panels and some bunch of deserts, and there would be cities that are green and mostly free of cars, and there would be electric cars, and for sure it would be vertical farming included. I think nature should be...
And everything would be full of forests.
Left to be nature, yes.
Nature would be nature again. People would live in cities. Everything would be nice. No pollution. Then like huge vertical farms in the suburbs. Yeah. And everything is surrounded by forests.
Yeah.
I mean, that would be great, right? So it's quite elegant, and I totally see that vision. So
yeah. So vertical farming is part of a perfect world. It's not a good business today. I think that's kind of the conclusion.
And we agree on that, sadly.
Yeah, unfortunately. But maybe there is still a way to make it work. Maybe there is a twist somewhere where you can find a way to make it work. But I think at the end of the day, the energy equation is just a killer right now, and energy needs to become much cheaper for this to work. Maybe you can do something with greenhouses already. Maybe greenhouses are a start, but they don't really save you that much space. In fact, they don't.
And another thing we didn't talk about is that greenhouses make you able to use your soil all year round, right? So this is already like a factor 2 or 3 compared to a vanilla agricultural field. So yeah, and I think this is already the reason why this is used already.
You may have more harvests per year, and then you need less space to do the same thing. Yeah, I see.
But did you know that nowadays already like almost 40% of the world's land is dedicated to agriculture?
Not surprising.
So no, but
is it 40% of all land or 40% of fertile
all
land?
Not of the land usable for agriculture, of all land. So this also includes
that's crazy.
Yeah. So that basically means everywhere where you can have agriculture, you do have agriculture.
I mean, I know some forests still, so there could be agriculture, there isn't. But there is, usually you have forests also in the form of agriculture, right?
Yeah, so forests are, that's also a point, right? Most of them are also not natural.
Yeah, I wonder if forests, industrial forests are counted in this 40%. But this is a pretty big number because you consider inhabitable areas, so cities, you have to take out deserts, and what you're left with is maybe 50%, and then out of that, it would be 80% used for agriculture. So I guess you have to take it with a grain of salt, this number. Maybe they count industrial forests, like forest culture, as agriculture there. But still,
yeah,
it would be nice to give nature some space back, and I think vertical farming, as you said, is the key there. It has to happen, as we often say.
Well, I mean, it doesn't have to happen now, but once we're at this point where space is really getting cramped, and we hopefully find some way to overcome our energy limitations. Yeah, then would just be very elegant. So I totally am in love with the idea. I wouldn't necessarily invest into that, but then again, I'm not SoftBank, so I don't have to make that decision.
Yeah, but now that we talk about all the benefits, I really want to make this work. So I'm already thinking about maybe there's... Yeah. All right. I don't think we will solve it in this podcast episode.
Okay. Konstantin, anything else?
No. As we always say, it has to happen, but it probably won't in the next couple of years.
Yeah, that's just how it is. See you next week.
See you next week.